Hey, what's going on, guys? Bluntguts here. This is a Watcher of Realms video. I so appreciate you joining my channel, and I hope you enjoy this damage testing for Talin, this much hyped hero that is going to be coming to global servers starting on Friday this week. That will be, I believe, April 18th, and she is very interesting. One of, if not the most unique heroes in Watcher of Realms. Her dual role functionality is something that is incredibly unique, and also, I think, just woefully underdeveloped, unfortunately. That is kind of my take on it. I think that she does a lot of things very, very well. I will say, without kind of burying the lead, I will say that she is kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. She is a good hero, but she's not a great hero. She's not great at anything that she does do, and that, I think, is going to be her downfall for endgame accounts. However, if you are anywhere from early game to mid game to late game, she's going to be an excellent, excellent hero for you. And hell, even if you are an endgame hero, due to how unique she is, I think you can't pass up an opportunity to pick up a copy of her. I'm just not so sure that she is really going to make it into a ton of different comps. But she is probably going to be somewhat of a solution in Abyss 1 in one way or another, depending on your account. And I am excited to share with you what I did find out. So in this video, I did test her marksman form. I am not going to be testing the damage on her defender form. I know a lot of folks have called it a fighter form. I think that is categorically inaccurate, unless you want to call somebody like Cyrus a fighter when he is in damage gear. This is not a fighter, I'm sorry to say. As far as the defender is concerned, yeah, solid damage, better than solid damage, probably one of the better damage dealing defenders in the game. But if you look at the way that she is structured, the increase in defense, the doubling of her max HP, the 4 block that she does gain when she goes into her ground-based form, everything about that screams tank. But I'm going to talk more about that when I do discuss the results at the end. This video is going to primarily focus on her marksman form. Now, I tested her in Nightmare for Guild Boss. I compared her at all of these significant awakening levels, a 0, a 1, a 3, and a 5 for both forms. Got some results to show you. But first, I'm going to show you the run. Then we're going to go discuss the numbers at the end. Before we do get to the run, a plea from me. I put a lot of effort into these videos. And quite frankly, my feeling recently has kind of been that detailed damage breakdowns like this are not really wanted by the community. I know there's a number of you that do want them. I know that is the case. But honestly, I don't know that I want to continue putting forth this kind of effort for a small group of folks that, as much as I do appreciate all of you, don't get me wrong, it is a lot of time and effort, and I just don't know that I have it in me to continue. So here is my plea to you. If you are somebody that has consumed my damage breakdowns, my in-depth, my deep dives in the past, but you are somebody that, for whatever reason, you have not subscribed, please do click that subscribe button. Click that thumbs up button, support the channel. Let me know that this is something that you do want to see going forward. If you don't want to subscribe for whatever reason, please tell me why you don't feel like it in the comments. Tell me how I can improve so that I can earn your subscription and your support. I would truly appreciate it. Give me that feedback at the very least. At the end of the day, I do kind of feel like there's just a real lack of in-depth and competent testing in this game. And I don't want to toot my own horn, but I do feel like a lot of my testing is done in a very intentional way that you don't really see, at least I don't really see, on many other, if any other channels. And so if that's not something that the community feels like they need in this game, then, I don't feel like I need to continue putting forth that kind of effort. But sound off. Let me know one way or the other. I really would appreciate it. I won't say anything further on it, but thank you in advance for your support. And let's go take a look at the run. All right, guys, I hope you did enjoy that. Before we do get to the results, I do want to talk just a little bit more about why I did not test her as a fighter and give you a little bit more insight into her berserker form, since I'm not going to be covering that with a damage test. It does increase her block by 3, giving her 4 block total. It does double her max HP. It does convert 80% of her attack to defense. And then on top of that, she is going to inflict 10% vulnerability of physical damage. This effectively gives her the ability to act as a defender. Unfortunately, what I have found is that her damage is just not up to snuff to call her a fighter. It doesn't make any sense to do so. When I tested her, the closest comp I could find was a Cyrus, and at A5 she does approximately the same damage, a little bit more, but approximately the same amount of damage single target as an A0 Cyrus in the same gear. Now, AoE, she's decent if you're in the right situation. But first, let's start with the max HP doubling. When she is in HP percent gear, in tank gear, she has effectively 29,000 base HP. Now, it's not that obviously. Her max HP gets doubled, but it equates to about 29,000 base HP. I tested this by using this on her when I did have her in tank gear. I then moved that tank gear onto Broke gear, and I equipped Broke gear in a similar artifact, the Nightmare Serpent, which does provide a 6% max HP heal every 3 instances of damage that the hero does take. So I was able to use those values, the 5% heal on Talin and the 6% heal on Broke gear, to determine that they both had approximately 190,000 HP. And so that is how I get the figure of approximately 29,000 base HP. As you can see, Broke gear does have 28,761 HP at A0, as I do have him on the screen right now. So that's where I got that number. So she has the same HP as Broke gear. She doesn't have anywhere near as much damage mitigation as he does. She's going to be able to heal herself better with that Ichor Chalice, but at the same time, she's not going to be able to use something like a Bastion Ring, which is going to give Broke gear essentially a 36% when he is blocking 4 units damage reduction to both physical and magic damage. She does get a bit of damage reduction on her ultimate, so that should be, you know, I want to be fair to her, but at the same time, she doesn't get all the things that he does as far as damage reduction. So he is going to, and this is true for other tanks as well, going to be a much better defender than she is in her ground-based form. So she's not going to be as good of a defender, and she doesn't do anywhere near as much damage as equivalent fighters. So she is not as good as either. Now, many content creators have tested her in Gear Raid 1 here. A few things about this. One, the only way that she can do this is if she's in damage gear. And again, if she's in damage gear, she's not going to have anywhere near as much HP. She's going to have approximately, like I said, 29,000 base HP, which puts her on par with units like Wukong or Phineas or a lot of the newer fighters that have been released. That does mean that she's going to max out at, on the character sheet, between 70 and 80k equivalent HP. Whatever that translates to on deployment, your guess is as good as mine. I could do some testing, I suppose, on that if I could actually deploy her in GVG. I can't right now. But either way, you're not going to get any more HP out of her than you would out of one of those fighters, assuming you do have her in damage gear. So she's not going to be any tankier than they are, and that is a problem. Now, getting back to Gear Raid 1 here, the only reason that she is able to do the damage that you've seen in other videos is because of this very unique range that she does have. She's got these 3 horizontal tiles that allow her to cover every single tile in front of this wall right here, meaning that there is never a point where she is not able to hit some of the units that are in front of that wall, which means that with an anti-healer, all she has to do is be able to whittle everything down before the wall does break. Now, I'm not taking anything away from her. She is a great damage dealing defender, but if you do use her, one, at single target, comparing her to like a legit single target damage dealer, like say like an A5 Wukong, you're looking at 15 to 20% of his damage. This unique range that she does have in front of her is the only reason that she's able to do this. If she had even like a 3-tile range in front of her, she wouldn't be able to hit the units that would stack up to the left and the right of her, but because she has this unique range, she seems to be much better than she actually is in this instance. So I've seen a lot of content creators put out tests like this. It's cool that she can do it, don't get me wrong, but it is not representative of the fact that she is like a good damage dealer, which I think is the impression that a lot of people have been leaving those videos with. Let's go talk about her damage numbers as a marksman, which in my opinion is by far her better form, but still not really top of the line at the end of the day. All right, so let me walk you through the data here. I will have a link to this data in the description of this video. I'm gonna give you some broad strokes takeaways from the data, and you're more than welcome to ask some questions in the comments if you have it, or go and peruse the data yourself using that link that I did just mention. So I did 2 tests at each awakening level. Each of these heroes was awakened all the way from A0 all the way up to A5. in lockstep. So when I awaken one, I awaken everybody else. The reason I did 2 tests at each awakening level is because I did 1 test with Talin as a piercer. I did a 2nd test with Talin as a watcher to get an idea of what the difference might be between using Eovar as a lord or using Ingrid as a lord. I think the first trend that has to be noted here is that Hex was by far the highest damage dealer at every single awakening level. Hex was on top by a large margin throughout the entire process. You will see a delta row at every awakening level after A0. That represents the percent increase in damage from the previous awakening level. So the delta row on A1 represents the percent increase going from A0 to A1. The delta row on A3 represents the increase going from A1 to A3, etc., etc. The biggest increase for Hex and Talin was going from A1 to A3. Hex got almost 37% damage increase going from A1 to A3 because he does get the ultimate duration increase on his A3, which is a massive boost for him. Talin did get a almost 30% increase going from A1 to A3, slightly less as a watcher than as a piercer, but I think that's probably RNG in play. I think you can assume she's going to get between 25 and 30% damage going from A1 to A3. Going to A5 was a little bit less for Hex and significantly less for Talin. Talin doesn't really get all that much going from A3 to A5 from a damage perspective. It's only the 8% penetration on her A4 that it's actually going to increase her damage. You will notice that as a piercer in this testing, she actually did lose damage going from A3 to A5. I think that's just RNG from her Blight Color's Claw artifact. I can't really say that. It's hard to say. But she did lose about 4.5% damage going from A3 to A5. Silas, on the other hand, his most significant jump was going from A3 to A5 when he does gain increased rage regen, minimizing the downtime between his ultimates, as well as a 15% physical damage bump on his A5, which is for everybody, not just him, but there are no other physical damage dealers in this comp. Just a few other notes here. I did account for Silas's A3, where he does increase marksman damage by 15%. You'll notice in the video that I did have Eovar place in order to soak up that 15% marksman damage increase that Silas does do on his A3. I wanted to make sure that neither Hex nor Talin was getting an unfair advantage. Going over to the right side of the sheet, I do have a breakdown of the gear that was used. Hex and Talin were in Warlord and Soulbound Arcana. They were both in triple attack percent pieces. Talin does have higher attack here. That is because she has higher base attack. She does have a little bit less crit damage, a little bit more rage regen. Speed was roughly equivalent, and she was using a Blight Caller's Claw versus the exclusive that both Hex and Silas did have on them. I wanted to put Hex and Silas in their exclusive because they have an exclusive and Talin does not, and that is a significant advantage that they do have over her, but it is an advantage that is present in the game, right? So I'm not going to ignore the fact that they have exclusives and she does not, especially because exclusives right now are more readily available than they ever have been before. So that is how I typically do my testing. Silas, I did gear slightly differently. He was in Warlord and Infernal Roar. That is his best set. I did have 2 crit damage pieces on the right-hand side and 1 attack bonus piece on the right-hand side. Reason being that when I gear Silas on global, I typically shoot for around 15k attack, and then I stack crit damage after that. That's what I did here. I was able to hit 14,835 attack as geared, and then I was able to stack crit damage up to 391%. Speed was about the same as the other two. His rage regen was a little lower than the other two, but either way. None of this is perfect, but I did not want to put Silas at an inherent disadvantage by gearing him inappropriately, just for the sake of like matching Talin and Hex. That didn't make sense in my mind. I tried to gear each one of these heroes as I believe you commonly will on the global servers in a general sense. Now, that may change from encounter to encounter. I think if I was really trying to max out Guild Boss 1 damage, I would have put at least 1 crit damage piece on both Hex and Talin, maybe 2, honestly. But I was not looking to specifically max the Guild Boss 1 damage. I was trying to get a sense of how much raw damage each one of these units were doing, and I was using the Guild Boss 1 as a target dummy. Below that, I do have a damage relative to Hex table, where I'm comparing the damage that each of these heroes did at each awakening level relative to Hex. Hex is always at 100% because he was the highest damage dealer in this comp, but what you're generally seeing for Talin is that she starts out at A0 doing close to 80% of Hex's A0 damage, and then the more awakenings that each one of these heroes does get, the broader that gap does become, culminating at A5, where she is doing around 2/3 of Hex's A5 damage. It's a pretty significant drop-off, honestly. And while I do think that Talin is a really, really good damage dealer, she is not Hex, and she is not one of the top damage dealers in the game. Now, that's a short list. The only other damage dealers that really come close or can exceed Hex's damage are Wukong and Kigiri, so it's probably not fair to expect Talin to be able to do that. But it's a pretty significant gulf at the same time. That doesn't mean that she does bad damage, but it does mean that she's not in that kind of rarefied air of the elite heroes in this game. Now, with that said, the higher the magic resist of the enemy target, the more narrow the gap between Hex and her's damage is going to become, because her magic resist ignore component on the ultimate is going to play a more significant role. But that is going to vary from encounter to encounter. But because there is such a significant difference between Talin and Hex's damage, I don't think she's ever going to get to the point where she is really going to exceed his damage, except maybe in some very, very rare instances. One thing I will note is that within her ultimate window, she will outdamage Hex. You can see that on the damage meters pretty clearly, that she does more damage in that burst window, but because of the downtime between her ultimates, she does fall off relative to Hex, and I think that is why Hex is so fantastic. It's not because he does so much damage in his ultimate. It's because from A3 on, his ultimate has so much uptime that his overall damage is just buoyed by that. So, yeah, I mean, those are my thoughts. I think if you are going to be pulling for her, I think A3 is the very logical place to stop right now, unless you have specific designs for that A5, that extra utility that does provide. But as far as damage is concerned, you're getting the most bang for your buck at A3. I definitely think she's worth going for. I don't currently think that she is worth putting soul stones into, but that's just my perspective. I will have a Should You Summon video out later today at some point, probably tonight. I would definitely check that out. If you do have any questions about any of this, like I said before, sound off in the comments. Let me know. I'm more than happy to answer them. I'm also available on my Discord, which will be linked in the description of this video. So if you do have any questions that you want to converse with me directly, feel free to hop on there and ping me, and I'm more than happy to discuss what I did here. In any case, y'all, I do appreciate you tuning in. Please do like and subscribe, support my channel. I would really appreciate it. Let me know that this is something that you do want to see going forward, because I don't need to go to all this trouble if it's not something that the community really does need. But I do personally find this helpful. I do think that this is important to note, especially when there's money involved, right? We want to know how much of an investment is Talin worth, and you know, as it stands right now, I'm thinking worth getting, worth going all out for. Depends on your account, I would say. Again, endgame accounts, less valuable. But I'll cover that more in the Should You Summon later. Thank you all again so much for tuning in. I will catch you all next time.